Asterisk the wind moved slowly through the park like it had nowhere to be. Dry leaves whispered across the path, dragging their brittle veins over broken stone. There was a bench, slanted, splintered, forgotten, and a man sat on it like he'd been carved into it long ago and never quite left. Asterisk he wore a coat that once belonged to something proud. Blue wool, brass buttons, but now it hung off his shoulders like it carried 1,000 ghosts. A tin coffee cup steamed between his hands, though the drink had gone cold hours ago. He didn't sip. He didn't blink much either. Just watched the way the trees swayed above the empty swings. Asterisk he looked like he was waiting to die, but not in any hurry. Asterisk a boy kicked a can down the path and his laughter jolted the birds. Two girls chased each other, dresses flaring like petals, until they vanished beyond the hedge. The man's fingers twitched once, then stillness again. Asterisk a wind came in sharper now, one that tasted like iron and rain. Asterisk. Then the soft sound of small footsteps, barefoot, rhythmic. He didn't look, not, until the voice came. Asterisk, you look sad, mister. Asterisk, the words pierced the quiet like a bell in fog. He looked down and there she was. A girl, no more than 7, hair like knotted silk, one side tied with a red ribbon, the other left wild. She wasn't afraid. She was studying him with a child's honesty, not cruel, not kind. Just true. Asterisk, you want to meet my mommy? He blinked, slow. The child tilted her head. She makes candles. She doesn't smile much either. Asterisk, he opened his mouth, closed it again. He looked around, unsure if this was real, if she was. Asterisk, the girl smiled a little. Not like a child begging for coins? More like someone offering something important. Like this meeting was no accident. My name's Clara, she said. He lowered his eyes to hers. Jonas, he said, and his voice cracked like the first fire of winter. Asterisk, you can come if you want, she said, already turning, but she don't like liars. So if you're gonna lie, you better not say anything at all. Asterisk, then she walked off. Barefoot in the dust, he watched her go, didn't move, didn't breathe really, but his body shifted forward. Almost leaned, almost. The next morning, he sat on the same bench. Same coat, same hands. Same stare, but this time he didn't wait as long. Clara appeared again. Same dress, new rip along the hem. She didn't speak, just looked at him. Then turned again. This time he stood. Asterisk, the walk was quiet. She didn't ask questions. She didn't even glance back to see if he followed. Asterisk, the path turned to gravel, then to packed earth. Old stalls sat like skeletons along the fence line. The rail yard moaned in the distance. Asterisk, then a small shack. Not much, wood gray from years, roof patched with mismatched tin. Candles flickered inside like stars in a cave. Asterisk, her mother stood behind a table, pouring wax into an iron mold. She didn't look up. This is Jonas, Clara said. Ruth raised her eyes, but only for a second. Asterisk, you can sit, she murmured, no other words. The inside smelled of lavender, ash, and something. Older, something like grief. Asterisk, Jonas sat on a crate. Watched her work. Her hands were strong, scarred, one knuckle twisted wrong like it never healed right. Clara took a stub of wax and began shaping it quietly. There were no questions, no introductions. Asterisk, just wax. Silence and the sound of wind outside pushing against the tin. Asterisk, later. After Clara fell asleep beside the candle rack, Ruth poured 2 cups of tea and handed one to Jonas. He nodded. She returned to her work. Asterisk, I'm not staying, he said quietly, almost ashamed to break the silence. Asterisk, I didn't ask you to, she replied without malice. Asterisk, he looked at the flame flickering between them. It stretched and bent, then righted itself again, like it was trying to dance but couldn't quite remember the steps. Asterisk, you a soldier? She asked, finally. Asterisk, not anymore. Asterisk, still carrying something, though. Asterisk, he looked down at the coat. The stitching near the collar was torn. Asterisk, she said you look sad. He nodded. She's right, Ruth said, and nothing else. Asterisk, that night he didn't go back to the bench. Asterisk, he sat behind her shack, under a tree where the candle's glow reached but didn't claim him. Stars blinked above like old friends refusing to speak. He thought of the letter again. It was still inside his coat. Folded so many times the edges were almost gone. He hadn't opened it. Couldn't, not yet. The next day. A rider came. Asterisk dust clung to his boots like blood. His coat was cleaner than the rest of him. Tin badge hanging from his vest. Asterisk he rode slow down the main street, past the chapel, past the saloon. He stopped near the general store and tied his horse. Looking for a man, he said, voice low. Eyes sharp, asterisk, name's Wren, Jonas Wren. Asterisk a woman near the well blinked. A man spat into the dirt. Asterisk the marshal said nothing else. Just walked on. Asterisk Jonas saw him from the candle shack window. Froze. He didn't tell Ruth, didn't tell Clara, asterisk, but that night. He didn't sleep, asterisk, he sat under the tree, the letter in his hand, unopened. His fingers gripped it like a weapon, but it had no blade, only memory. He remembered the fire, asterisk. He remembered the scream that wasn't hers, wasn't his, but both. Asterisk, he remembered his daughter's dress, yellow. The one he bought when he came back from the war. The one that should have been safe, asterisk, he remembered her voice saying, you promised. And then he remembered nothing. Just ash and silence, footsteps behind him, light, bare, asterisk. Is it from your kid? Clara asked. He didn't answer. She sat beside him. Not touching? Just sitting, asterisk. I don't have a dad, she said. Like it was weather. He didn't look at her. But if I did, she said, I'd want him to read what I wrote. She stood, left a tiny candle near his knee, unlit, then walked away, asterisk the next morning. Ruth said nothing as he stepped out of the tree's shadow. She just handed him a cup of water. Asterisk. He nodded. She turned back to her candles. But the way her hand hovered over the wick before lighting it, just for a moment, told him she saw the man riding into town, asterisk. And she knew his name, asterisk, and maybe, just maybe, she wasn't going to run either. The wind picked up again, but this time, it wasn't the same. It was colder, like something had remembered how to hunt, asterisk. The storm rolled in without ceremony, no lightning, no warning. Just a slow thickening of air, a stillness too complete to trust. Asterisk by noon. The sky was the color of old iron and the wind pushed with intent. Jonas stood outside the candle shack. Sleeves rolled, shirt soaked with sweat and soil. He'd spent the morning helping Ruth rebuild her table, the one that cracked when the frame rotted through. She hadn't asked for help. He hadn't offered. It just happened the way storms do, slowly, then all at once. Asterisk, rain'll come through fast, Ruth said, squinting at the sky. Won't leave much behind, asterisk. Jonas looked at her sideways. You talking about the storm? She didn't answer. Inside, Clara hummed as she rearranged the candles by color, wax-stained fingers moving with purpose. She paused now and then to glance out the window, like she was watching for something only children could see. Asterisk by dusk. The rain hit like a curse. Asterisk it came sideways, slapping the tin roof until the whole shack shuddered. Water slid under the door. Ruth threw down sacks and towels. Jonas grabbed what he could. Together they moved in silence, lit only by candlelight. Asterisk one of the racks tipped. Wax splattered the floor. Clara yelped and jumped back. Careful, Ruth said, pulling her close. Jonas moved to the door. Looked out. Asterisk the lower yard was flooding. The fence was already under. He closed the door. Basement? He asked. Asterisk Ruth nodded toward a trapdoor behind the table. Cellar? Dirt floor. Won't last long. Asterisk he paused, then pointed. Pack what you can. We'll move uphill. Asterisk, there's a barn past the ridge, Ruth said. Abandoned. Asterisk, I'll find it. Asterisk, but Ruth didn't move. She stared at him like she could see something that hadn't been spoken yet. Asterisk, you good with children? She asked. He hesitated. Used to be, he said. They didn't talk much on the walk. Ruth carried Clara. Jonas led the way, his coat heavy with rain, boots sinking into mud with each step. The sky groaned overhead, but no lightning. Just endless water and wind and the crunch of old sorrow. Asterisk, the barn stood like a ghost on the edge of the ridge, walls half collapsed, roof sloped. But it held. Just enough. Asterisk inside, Clara curled in a hay-lined corner wrapped in Ruth's shawl. Jonas lit 3 candles. The wind howled outside, but the flame didn't flinch. Asterisk, you stay in because of her? Ruth asked, voice low. Asterisk, I don't. No, Jonas said. She asked me to meet her mother. Asterisk, that all it takes? Asterisk, he looked at her then. Rain glistened on her cheek like it could drown a secret. Asterisk, sometimes, he said. That's enough. They stayed there 3 days. The flood pulled back, but slow. Town was mud, fences bent, pigs drowned in the ditch behind the chapel. Asterisk, Ruth didn't say much. But she shared everything, food, water, space. And Jonas worked beside her like he'd always belonged. Asterisk, she watched him when he didn't notice. Saw how his hands trembled when they were still too long. How he stared into the candlelight like it was a grave. Asterisk, one morning. She found him outside, kneeling beside a burned piece of timber. It was a candle mold, broken. He didn't speak. Just looked at it like it had asked him a question he didn't know how to answer. Asterisk, that evening. She gave him thread and needle. Fix your coat, she said. He stared. Asterisk. You've bled enough from that collar. Time to stitch something shut. Asterisk, he didn't argue, just sat. Began sewing with fingers too big for the job. Asterisk, when she turned away, he whispered, thank you. She heard him anyway, but peace doesn't last in towns that remember blood. Asterisk. The marshal came back. This time with 2 men, hard faces, eyes like winter. They rode slow, searched slower. Asking quieta. Asterisk, no posters, no name shouting. Just heavy boots and long glances. Asterisk, Ruth saw them first. From the ridge. She said nothing at first. Then she found Jonas in the barn. They're here, she said. Asterisk, he didn't ask who. Just looked at her. Asterisk, you gonna run? She asked. I've run too long, he said. Then hide. Asterisk, they cleared space under. The floorboards of the barn, a gap just wide enough. Jonas crawled in, coat wrapped around him, breath shallow. Ruth laid old sacks above. Nothing else. Clara wanted to stay with him. Let her, he whispered. Just for a minute. Asterisk, she climbed in beside him, curled up like a cat. Said nothing, then slipped something in his hand. A drawing, 3 stick figures. One had a blue coat, the other had hair like ribbons. The third had a candle between them. Boots thudded on the wooden planks above. Voices. A man coughing. The marshal speaking low. Asterisk, woman lives alone, one of the men muttered. Smells like she's hiding something. She's hiding grief, the marshal said. Then silence, footsteps fading. Hours passed before Ruth opened. The floorboards. Asterisk, Jonas crawled out, eyes bloodshot, fists clenched. Asterisk, you should go. She said. He nodded, but didn't move. Asterisk, you said you weren't staying. Asterisk, I didn't mean to. She studied him. Then don't say anything, just stay. Asterisk, the next day, Ruth took him to a small rise above the woods, a clearing. Wind in the trees like the whisper of things that once were. Asterisk, a single wooden cross. Stood in the earth, no name. Just a rusted ring tied with twine. Asterisk, my husband, she said. Jonas stood beside her. He went west, never came back. Found him 2 years later. Half eaten by wolves. Asterisk, she looked away. Deserter. Jonas didn't flinch. I've buried enough shame. Doesn't mean it don't follow? He nodded. Then said, my daughter, fire took her. Took her mother too. Asterisk, your fault? She asked. He opened his coat, pulled out the letter, still sealed. Ruth waited. He didn't open it. Not yet, he whispered. She didn't push. Instead, she lit a candle and set it in the grass beneath the cross. That night they sat in. Silence. 3 candles burned on the table. Clara slept in Ruth's lap. Asterisk, Jonas held the drawing. Looked at the blue coat. The ribboned hair. The candle. He looked at the letter again. Still folded, still waiting. But this time his thumb traced. The seal, pressed down, just once, like maybe tomorrow it might open. The morning came with firelight in the sky, not the kind that burned, but the kind that warned. Orange streaks through gray clouds. like someone had struck a match behind the heavens and held it there too long. Jonas stood at the edge of the field, wind slicing through the torn coat. He still hadn't finished stitching. The letter was in his hand again, damp now, thinner than paper should be, but still unopened. Behind him, Clara's laughter rang across the field, short, bright, too real. She was chasing a chicken through the mud, barefoot as always, hair tangled but glowing like copper in the light. Ruth watched from the steps of the shack, arms crossed. Eyes heavy, Jonas turned to her slowly. They're coming today. She didn't ask how he knew. Marshall's been patient, he added. That ends today. Ruth looked away. You could go. I could. Would you? He looked at Clara, then down at the letter. No. They came in the hour just before noon. When the sun sits heavy and the shadows are shortest. 3 riders. Dust rising behind them like ghosts. Jonas stood in the yard, alone. Coat buttoned. Boots planted, letter in his pocket. Marshall dismounted first. Walked slow, hat in his hand. Ren. Jonas nodded. Marshall. You ran for 3 years. I walked, Jonas said. Running's too fast for guilt? The marshal. Studied him. You know what I'm here for. I do. You want to say anything first? Jonas looked past him, to Ruth standing in the doorway, Clara's small hand gripping her skirt. Then he looked back, and for the first time in 3 years, he spoke the truth. I left the house to put out the barn fire. Thought it was the only thing burning. When I came back, the roof had gone. His hands trembled. My daughter had written me a letter the day before. I found it under the table, singed. I couldn't open it, not yet. He took it from his coat. Held it out. The marshal took it, unsure. Opened it, read, then looked up, eyes colder. She said she forgave you, he said. Before she ever knew what you'd done. Jonas nodded. I couldn't forgive myself, he said. The marshal exhaled, long, angry. Turn around, he said. Jonas turned. The marshal reached for the cuffs, but before he could clasp the first one, gunfire split the air. One of the deputies dropped, shoulder shot clean through. He screamed. Ruth stood behind the rain barrel. Rifle still smoking. You take him, she said calmly. You take a part of us too. The marshal turned, fury in his jaw. He's wanted for desertion of duty, 2 counts of obstruction. He fled justice. He's also the reason my daughter laughs again. The marshal didn't move. Clara stepped forward. Walked straight. Between them. Held something in her hand, a candle. She looked up at the marshal. Mama says fire can hurt or heal. Silence. Even the wind held its breath. The marshal stared at the girl. Then at Jonas, then down at the letter again. He knelt. Placed the letter back in Jonas's hand. You're still guilty. He said, that doesn't change. I know, Jonas replied. But there's guilt, the marshal said, and then there's repentance. He turned. Walked to his horse. You're not free, he said over his shoulder, but you're not running either. The 2 men rode off, one limping, bleeding, but alive. That night Jonas sat by the shack, fire crackling low, the candle. Clara gave him, stood beside the flame, unlit. He opened the letter again. Read it a second time, then a third, each time slower. The words were crooked, misspelled, but they bled love. Dear Papa, I know you try real hard, Mama says sometimes. You're just tired, but I see you. I see you when you look away, it's okay. I still love you. If you ever forget who you are, find someone who reminds you. Love, Emma. He folded the letter, tucked it back into his coat, then lit the candle, held it in both hands, like an oath. A week passed. Then another. Jonas began helping Ruth at the stall, carving wicks, hauling wax. He didn't talk much. But he didn't leave. Clara sat in his lap one morning, showing him how to twist the wick just right. Her voice was soft, steady. You look less sad, mister. He smiled, just a little. You remind me of someone. She tilted her head. Your daughter? He nodded. She's the one who wrote the letter? Asterisk. Yes. Asterisk, what did she say? He looked at her. She said I could find myself again if I met someone who reminded me who I was. Asterisk. Clara reached for a candle. Maybe that's what candles do too, remind us we still have light. The final image. Jonas stands in the same park where it all began, bench behind him, candle in his hand. Clara runs ahead, laughing. Asterisk. Ruth watches from a distance, arms crossed. There's sorrow in her still, but also peace. Asterisk. Jonas places the candle on the bench, lights it, and walks away. The flame flickers but doesn't go out. Asterisk.